I find myself incredibly humbled by the words of the people before me, whose work not only on the International Development Committee, but also on long-standing issues. And I congratulate the member for Mid Derbyshire for securing this debate and for her long-standing work on this issue and for the reports through the IDC on sexual abuse in the aid sector. I think this is a staggering example of why the IDC needs to continue in future years, and I think that is something I will certainly be pushing in the coming weeks and months. There were a few points that were made, if I may, just from the member for Mid Derbyshire, who talked about the need for agencies not to look good, but do good, and that is something that I hope I'll be able to add to in due course. And the member for Rotherham talked about shattering the culture of impunity, something that I am working on. I'm working on with her as well. And if I may also say, the member for Basingstoke talked about the need for a sustained course of action. Well, I think the UK government has no excuse, since in 2014 we launched an initiative on preventing sexual violence in conflict, and 6 years on, nothing has happened other than lip service, and we need more to be done in the short term. So I agree with everything that she said on that point. Mr. Chairman, in any conflict or crisis, the sight of aid agency workers or peacekeepers should be a welcome one. They are the first responders, the international community's emissaries of goodwill, peace and assistance. For those suffering from the horrors of war, famine and disease, our NGOs and international organisations like the UN should be welcomed. Their arrival reflects not just medical assistance, food aid and peacekeeping missions, but a realisation that the international community are paying attention to the plight of a people and of a conflict. Yet in recent years, the bond of trust and faith in our NGOs and those multilateral organisations have been severely damaged by the persistent examples of sexual exploitation and abuse by aid workers, some of which has already been mentioned by members in this chamber. But in 2002, the UNHCR and Save the Children reported that 67 allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse by 40 aid agencies and 9 peacekeeping battalions in Africa. In 2004, Kate Holt documented the sexual exploitation and abuse by UN peacekeepers in the DRC. 2007 and 2008, a study documented that sexual exploitation and abuse was widespread and common knowledge in aid agencies in Kenya, Namibia and Thailand. The list goes on and on and on. And the same can be said for 2008, 2015, 2018, saw exploitation in Syria, the DRC and Central African Republic. This is not an exception. These are just the ones that we know about, and that is where the problem lies. Imagine, Mr. Chairman, the horror of recognising that those who are there to help turn out to be the exploiters, abusers, who harm the very people who they are there to protect. Earlier this year, the UN marked International Day of Peacekeepers, and across this country, we marked the extraordinary work that many peacekeepers do across the world. And it was right to do so. But it was also a reminder of the work that we have to do to ensure that sexual exploitation and abuse is eradicated. While many in this chamber joined me in marking that day, I was struck by the remarkable number of people who chose not to do so due to the reports that I have just referenced. And despite those reports that have been published and the press attention that comes with it, this matter is underreported. The lack of attention given to this matter does not reflect the fact that the level of abuse and exploitation is at an incredibly high level. And we need to rectify this by collating and documenting and protecting survivors so that we can identify and prevent in future years. Fortunately, Mr. Chairman, I believe there is a solution, and as chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict, and having worked with Lord Hague when he set up that initiative in 2012, I believe there is a way in which we can end the culture of impunity and tackle sexual abuse and violence in conflict and crises around the world. We have 146 nations that have signed our UN resolution on this topic, and it's time that we took the action that we promised all those years ago, and to end the mindset that those who perpetrate such crimes are able to escape justice. We need radical action to ensure that in no place across the globe you'll be able to escape justice if you commit acts of sexual abuse and exploitation. Since faith in multilateral organisations has been so severely hampered over the last few years, I believe that the UK should look to create a new international body that documents crimes, supports survivors and helps launch prosecutions. This three-pillared approach and organisation would not only be a conduit for international organisations to feed in their accounts of sexual exploitation and abuse, but for citizens of every country to be able to seek assistance and to know that the international community is safeguarding their rights, to restore the faith that has been so badly lost. Next year, we hold the presidency of the G7, And I believe that this would be the most opportune moment to launch such an international body. I apologise to the Minister because I made the same point to him yesterday in this chamber as well, but I think we might as well be consistent about it. Coupled with a 3% ring fence of our aid budget to tackle gender-based violence, I believe that we can reassure people, both at home and abroad, that the UK is still a force for good and that we will not shirk our international responsibilities. Mr. Chairman, to conclude on a slightly more positive note, I was delighted to read earlier this year about the first ever Pakistani female engagement team who were deployed to the DRC. This team, which included psychologists, stress counsellors, doctors, nurses, was the right step to help rebuild the faith in our peacekeeping missions across the globe. And I hope that many other organisations will be taking note and work to rebuild that relationship that is so desperately needed between survivor and aid agency. Later this month, on the 25th of November, it is International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And I am working with parliaments across the world on a statement of intent and action, and we'll be holding our own debate in this place on gender-based violence and the FCO and DFID merger, which I'm sure the Minister will probably be responding to. I'm also incredibly grateful for the member for Rotherham who's already agreed to sign this letter, and I will be sending out copies later on. But we have the opportunity to take action. The UK has the platform to do so next year. We need a new international body, and it should be here in the UK where we are leading by action, not just warm words.